Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This is Smart TCG, and today I'm going to be going over one of the more underrated decks heading into the Temporal Forces format, which is going to be Dialga VSTAR. Temporal Forces is the brand new set that is going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks, along with rotation as well, which is quickly approaching, where all of the E-block sets will be rotating out of the standard formats. This is a deck in the post-rotation format that actually has a lot of potential moving forward and has been seeing some success in Japan. In today's video, we're going to go over exactly how the deck works, and then we're going to hop into a list that I have constructed and kind of go over the reasonings behind certain cards. We're going to be able to go over pretty much everything you need to know about this deck, how you should be playing specific matchups, and also how you should be setting up your board state. With that being said, if you enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Let's hop right into it. Alrighty, hopping into the engine of this Origin Form Dialga VSTAR deck, we have Origin Form Dialga VSTAR. Origin Form Dialga VSTAR, first off, has 280 HP. It has been around for quite some time. It just hasn't necessarily had a whole lot of success. We've seen Origin Form Palkia VSTAR see a lot more success, and Dialga was kind of always the afterthought of the two. Its attack, though, is relatively powerful. Metal Blast deals 40 plus 40 more for each metal energy attached to this Pokemon, meaning that this attack can scale from doing very little damage to one-shotting pretty much anything in the Pokemon trading card game. We also have one of the most powerful V-Stars pretty much ever put on a card, being Star Chronos. Star Chronos deals 220 damage, and you get to take another turn after this one ends, meaning that your opponent's entire turn skips, and then you get a whole other one being able to attack. Now, the problem with this V-Star power and also Metal Blast is that they take a lot of energies to set up. With the Metang, we're able to get those energies. Metang is a brand new Pokemon coming out in the brand new set Temporal Forces, and it really makes this deck function. It's a much more stable engine than relying on things like Metal Saucer that this deck had in the past. It's really powerful. Its ability reads, once during your turn, you may look at the top 4 cards of your deck and attach any number of basic metal energy cards you find there to your Pokemon in any way you like. Shuffle the other cards and put them onto the bottom of the deck, which means that you can continuously use Metang after Metang, putting all the non-energies on the bottom, which is really nice. This is really important to mention, because if it was shuffle all those cards back into the deck, that would be significantly worse, because you'd have the risk of using a second Metal Maker and then redrawing into some of those cards you might have seen off the first one. So the fact that they go on the bottom is actually really nice. This is going to be how we're going to be able to power up our Origin Form Dialga VSTAR. We're going to be wanting to use multiple Metang's abilities every single turn to load tons of energy onto this, trying to get a Metal Blast up as quickly as possible, and then using the Star Chronos to finish off the game. We play plenty of energy in this deck as well, so we have pretty decent odds of being able to get that Metal Blast to one-shot range and achieve the Star Chronos when you need it. Next up, we have some other cards that haven't necessarily seen a whole lot of play except in a few rogue decks. We have Hisuian Basculin and Hisuian Basculegion. Hisuian Basculin reads, for 0 energy, you get to search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench, then shuffle your deck. This deck is very much based around setting up. You're not going to be attacking typically on that first or second turn for a whole lot of damage, so you want to use the Hisuian Basculin to get multiple Beldums out, to get your Dialga as well down onto the field, so that you're going to be able to evolve into multiple Metangs and also Dialga VSTAR on that next turn. Since this deck plays so many energy, Hisuian Basculegion actually makes a lot of sense. With its attack, Upstream Spirits, which also, similar to Hisuian Basculin, does not cost any energy, deals 20 damage times 20 for each basic energy card in your discard pile. Then you shuffle those cards into your deck. So this card, for the most part, is going to be used at the very end of the game. Since your deck plays 18 metal energies, that's currently what my list has, you're going to be able to deal over 300 damage at the very end of the game, which can serve very useful versus some of those high HP decks like Charizard EX. Another thing as well is if you get a lot of energy in the discard pile, maybe 8 to 10, and you want to maybe take out something like a Lumineon, you can use something like Boss's Orders or the Prime Catcher, bring up one of those Pokemon, use the Upstream Spirits, get all those energies back into the deck, which then increases your chances of your Metangs hitting, and then potentially look to Star Chronos or use something like your Metal Blast. So this card just makes a lot of sense in the deck and is actually really powerful. With a deck that plays so many energy, it's really strong in this deck. Next up, I've created a little graphic kind of going over what the optimal board might look like on that very first turn. Starting something like a Hisuian Basculin or attempting to retreat into it is really powerful because you play a couple of these in the deck, which means you can lose one on the first turn of the game. Along with cards like Super Rod, it's totally okay for one of your Basculin to hit the discard pile early, which means that you can use it to gather the crew to get multiple Beldum on the field, get your Radiant Greninja or your Origin Form Dialga Vs also on the field. It's just a great setup card. Since this deck is a setup heavy deck, it needs to get multiple Metangs out. This card just makes a lot of sense to try to get out in the active spot on the very first turn. This is what a really solid board state looks like, and is something that I would always be trying to accomplish in most games. Now, you could potentially swap out maybe one of those Origin Form or potentially a Radiant Greninja for maybe if you need to use a Lumineon or a Mew EX. You have a couple options, you know, so this is kind of what I would always try and get, but there will be some situations where you need to get a Pokemon that either draws you cards or searches for a supporter, and you have some flex spots being the Radiant Greninja in the second Origin Form. Next up, we have a brand new card as well from Temporal Forces, being Prime Catcher. Prime Catcher reads, switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot, and if you do, you switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. Pretty much just is a cross switcher, but you only need one of them. One of the more powerful cards that the Pokemon TCG has ever created. This card is amazing. This card means that you can use a draw supporter and find a gust effect, which is just a very powerful effect. Probably the best A-spec card. I know we're getting some ones in the future sets like Unfair Stamp that are definitely going to compete with Prime Catcher, but as of right now, I think this is the strongest one, and it makes a lot of sense in this deck moving forward, and would personally be the one that I would consider. You could potentially play something like Master Ball instead to increase those chances of being able to get those Metangs out early on that second or third turn of the game. However, you're able to set up, I think, consistently enough to where having the Prime Catcher just has a little bit more value. Alrighty, everyone, here is the deck list that I have constructed, and I'll be going over, you know, some of the reasonings behind these card counts. For Metang, one of the most obvious counts, I think, in this deck, you want to have those Beldums on the field as quickly as possible and make sure you get into multiple Metang quickly to power up your Origin Form Dialga VSTAR line. Now, I only play a 2/2 Origin Form Dialga VSTAR line, and people might be wondering, this is your main attacker, why are you only playing a 2/2 line? And the reason is that with something as powerful as Star Chronos, you oftentimes are only going to need one Origin Form Dialga to be able to finish the entire game. You can use the Star Chronos to potentially take 2 prizes, skip a turn, and then use Metal Blast to take 2 more prizes, and then you still have other really powerful attackers like Zamazenta, which works really nicely in this deck, and also the Hisuian Basculegion as well. Zamazenta makes a lot of sense because you're able to power it up with Metang and use that Retaliate, dealing 220 damage for 3 energy if your opponent knocked out one of your Pokemon on the previous turn. It's a great 1 prize card as well to put your opponent potentially on an uneven prize trade, which just makes a lot of sense. Has a respectable amount of HP as well. Pretty cool ability, also reducing your opponent's damage done to you too, which is pretty cool. Radiant Greninja, consistency is very important. You have so many energies, you can discard a lot of them. Draw some cards, boost your consistency and your ability to set up. Also feeds really well into the Hisuian Basculegion line. Basculin being able to use the Gather the Crew to be able to set up your board state, and then Basculegion dealing 20 × 20 for every energy in your discard pile works great with the Radiant Greninja, as you're going to be dumping tons of metal energies into the discard pile to look for that big Basculegion KO. Mew EX as well for consistency. Restart is a great ability. Also, you can power it up with a Metang as well, being able to load that up so you can, you know, use something like the genome hacking, which can definitely catch some people off guard. Lumineon, Luminous Sign, consistency is very important. Being able to get a supporter card for Pokemon is just really strong. For Professor's Research, you want to burn through the deck quickly, get lots of energies in the discard pile and also on the field as well. So research just makes a lot of sense, allows you to burn through your deck. And yeah, consistency is king. 3 Iono as well, you know, great draw support, also a good disruption card towards the end of the game, and 3 bosses orders. You want to have a lot of gust effects in this deck because when you use Star Chronos, you really want to make sure that you're taking a prize card. So for example, if you're playing against something like a Charizard deck, you really want to have a boss's orders or Prime Catcher in many circumstances to potentially knock out something like the Lumineon, so that you can then follow it up the next turn with another big 2-prize knockout with something like your Metal Blast. So having heavy gust effects, especially with research, meaning you're going to be discarding a couple of those sometimes, just makes a lot of sense. 4 Ultra Ball, 3 Nest Ball, and also 2 Buddy Poffin as well. Just trying to be as consistent as possible. I would have liked to add in potentially a 4th Nest Ball or a 3rd Poffin. However, space is pretty tight because you want to have as many metal energies as possible in this deck. So I decided to cut 1 Poffin for the 18th energy, just so you can use the Basculegion a little bit more consistently, and I still think it's okay. Buddy Poffin is great, one of the brand new cards from Temporal Forces, allowing you to get out things like the Hisuian Basculin out early, and also your Beldums as well. And then, Nest Ball and Ultra Ball have been around for quite some time, just very good cards in general. 1 Counter Catcher. Counter Catcher is still very, very solid in this deck. You are going to fall behind sometimes, especially when you have something like the Hisuian Basculin, oftentimes being sacrificed early in the game. So Counter Catcher just seems very, very solid to bring up potentially liabilities. Maybe something like a Lumineon or something like a Squawkabilly you can easily knock out on that second turn of the game. Super Odd as well. You play research, so you can discard some of these important lines of Pokemon, and also you can put back energy as well. You can put back Pokemon or energy, just very, very good. Makes a lot of sense in this deck. Vitality Band is quite nice in this deck because it means that you need 1 less energy to knock out something like a Charizard, because the Dialga does 40 plus 40, which means that if you get to 320, you're 10 short of knocking out something like that Charizard. So having the Vitality Band just seems very, very nice. Prime Catcher as well. Prime Catcher is an amazing card. Could potentially be something like Master Ball for a little bit more consistency in setting up your Pokemon, but Prime Catcher is just so insane, it's kind of hard not to play it. And then we got 18 energy as well. Playing 18, a little bit bigger count compared to some other lists. I've been seeing some of the Japanese lists that kind of run around recently at some of the City League tournaments. This list is originally based off that. I made some changes to it, but some of those lists have been playing 17. I decided to go up to 18. Just being able to consistently get those energies with the Metang is very, very important. So I think that playing the 18 makes a lot of sense. But anyways, this is my list on the deck. Let me know what you think of the deck in the comments. I'm going to kind of go over a couple of matchups and just kind of how I would approach them now. So when you play versus something like, let's say, Charizard EX, for example, you really want to try and use a Boss's Orders, Prime Catcher, or Counter Catcher to be able to force up something like a Lumineon to then use Star Chronos, and then follow that up with another Gust effect, potentially to knock out the Pidgeot. You really want to take that Pidgeot off the field because that's going to cripple them, making it so that they can't use Iono as often as they would like, which can oftentimes disrupt your deck. Your Pokemon like Zamazenta as well are very, very good attackers in this matchup. Also, the Basculegion towards the end of the game, if you do get so many energy in the discard pile that becomes an option, it's a really nice play that you can make. Another thing as well is once your Dialga falls versus Charizard, and if you just need 2 more prize cards to potentially win the game, you can kind of change your strategy and go all 1 prizers and force them down to 1 prize, so that then you can bench Mew EX, use your Metang, load up the Mew EX, and then use the genome hacking to copy Charizard EX's attack for 330. So that is an option that you can sometimes do. Versus things like Dialga VSTAR, you really want to be focusing on using your Zamazenta. Super Odd is good to, get back the Zamazenta to combat the Shinchinos. Star Chronos is really, really good. What you can do in this matchup specifically is you can Star Chronos one of the Shinchinos and then Boss's Orders, Prime Catcher, or Counter Catcher the other one and knock those 2 out, because Lugia itself isn't necessarily a major threat. However, the Shinchinos being able to one-shot everything become really, really scary. So if you're able to wipe out their only 2 Shinchinos on the board, their board state often falls apart because Lugia is not an insanely powerful attacker, especially into this matchup, as they're not able to one-shot the Dialga. So those are just, kind of some ideas of how I would play versus some of the expected very popular decks in the post-rotation format. But anyways, that is going to do it for me today. If you enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It's the best way to support me as a creator. If you're looking for any Temporal Forces product or any TCG TCG product, make sure to check out GameGridSLC.com. You can use my code SmartTCG for 5% off. You can check the very first link in the description for that. But anyways, thank you so much as always. I love you guys very much, and I will speak with you again soon. Peace.